Are you one of those people who are not into young adult or contemporary fiction books? Well, then this video is for you. Greetings, my name is Nina, welcome back to the Metal Book Tavern. I think if you watched some of my previous videos, you probably know that I am not very much into YA genre. It's not my thing. However, I also mentioned in one of my videos, I think it was the things I dislike about booktube, something along the lines that, well, if there's something interesting, I'd love to read it. I mean that I don't read young adult fiction and I don't read much contemporary books. If I do find something that interests me, I'd love to read it. And of course, I do like watching some bookish content. Of course, there are booktubers who really like recommending YA and contemporary books to their audience. And then I remember that even before booktube, around 2015, I read some young adult fiction that I really enjoyed. And even though booktubers mostly recommend contemporary or young adult, I still managed to get a few good recommendations from them, even though it's just a few. And in this video, I'm going to combine these recommendations and recommend young adult / contemporary books to you, the person who probably isn't into such genre. Like me, if you are into this type of fiction, you're also welcome. Let's go straight to the books. So now the very first book that came to my mind is The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. Well, I guess you already guessed the book by the cover. Well, it's quite recognizable. Written in the form of letters, a young boy named Charlie goes to high school and he befriends two kids who are a few years older than him. They are step siblings. So in his letters, Charlie tells about his life in school, about his childhood, his deceased aunt, and he reflects through his memories and so on. The main character is kinda a loner. He really likes reading, especially classics, and he gets some great book recommendations from his literature teacher. So he has a brother and sister, and in the book they aren't named. By the way, one fun fact about the book, I originally thought of unhauling it because I wanted to free some space for new books, and I thought that I wouldn't read this anymore, and eventually I have reconsidered doing that and I decided to keep it. It's staying. Now the next book is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. So this is considered to be a young adult novel, and it's also considered to be a historical fiction. This book follows the main character, a young girl named Liesl Memminger, who is sent to live with her foster parents. This book is set in Germany and it starts in the late 30s. So the book follows Liesl's life, her bonding with her foster parents, the neighbor boy she befriends, and also another character. I won't spoil whom. If you read the book, you know. One thing that makes this book unique is that it's told from the perspective of Death. Yes, Death is the narrator. This book also covers some heavy topics, and it's done in a very beautiful manner. So I love the author's writing style. I have already made a video about The Book Thief, and now I realize that there's more to say about the book. I didn't say even a half. Yeah, this is definitely a wonderful read. I definitely recommend this, and it's quite an easy read too. Its writing style is quite easy. This time we have Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I guess that you are probably sick of this book because it's literally everywhere. Well, the author's name is literally everywhere. However, for me, it's less about the book's popularity and more about the fact that this is a book about rock stars. Well, I think if you watched my previous videos, you probably know that I really like rock and metal, and I also own quite a lot of biographies of various bands, certain individuals, or even genres. Yes, I'm addicted to that genre, and Daisy Jones and the Six, I originally did not intend to read, but then I found out that this is about this fictional band in which the main characters, well, the members of the band, they tell all about why they eventually broke up, what happened. The band, the Six, is said to be inspired by Fleetwood Mac. By the way, I do think that Fleetwood Mac has sort of a spring/summer vibes. Really good music, it's just that I realized that it's definitely more spring or summer music, and it's not something I want to listen to in the winter. Quite an unusual writing style, because this book is basically one huge interview with all the members of the band. When I was reading this book, I could not believe that the band was fictional, because it did remind me of a lot of rock and metal biographies that I read, and this wild rock and roll lifestyle is present here. Definitely a book I'd recommend for those of you who have this rock star spirit. I do really like to say that I have a soul of a rock star. Maybe this is what happens when you read a lot of rock and metal biographies and such music is your go-to on a daily basis, yeah. Next book is the book that I read recently in January 2024. I'm filming this on January 21st, 2024, yeah. I read it in 2 days. It's quite an easy read, and this is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. One feature I really loved about this book, and it's one of the reasons that I read it so quickly, is that the chapters are really short. There are a lot of chapters, and they are like 1 page, 2 page, 4 pages long, not too much, and this is what I liked it, along with the easy writing style. So what this book is about? So this book is about a young girl named Avery Grams. So she's quite an ambitious girl. She has plans for life. She wants to get to university, to get a stable job, and so on. And then suddenly a billionaire dies and leaves everything to her. And her life is turned upside down. Everyone is shocked. The people are shocked, the billionaire's family is shocked, and Avery herself is shocked. So this is the book that I read in 2 days, and I just couldn't put it down. It's just so addictive, it's so fun, and it's full of mysteries, well, because the billionaire who passed away really loved mysteries, and each character in the book has their own skeleton in the closet. The next book over here is Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. I got this recommendation from the book Leo, and I absolutely adored it, and I really like the cover. It's very beautiful, I think. So the story is about a young girl named Frances Janvier, I hope I pronounced that right, who is as it discussed, a study machine. She keeps studying, she wants to get into university and so on. And in her free time, she really likes listening to this podcast named Universe City. One day she meets a guy named Aled, and her friendship with him exposes a different side of her. And soon Frances finds out that she's torn apart between the ambitions, what is expected of her, and what she longs to be. So this book deals with a lot of questions like, is a university actually worth it? Is it the main goal to get there? Is it really important? What's actually important? Yeah, it's definitely something I'd recommend for a youngster. However, I'd recommend an adult reading this too. Also, this is the first 400-page book in English that I read in 1 day. Yes, I spent the entire day reading it and I loved it. So the next book over here is a sci-fi, and it's one of my all-time favorite books, and this is Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. This book is definitely suitable for a young audience. It can be considered young adult, even though the main character is like 6 years old and he grows up throughout the book. Well, in the film he is a teenager. However, when I think of Ender's Game, I don't think of this as a young adult. I think of it as such a solid sci-fi novel. This is definitely my favorite sci-fi book of all time. So this book is about a young boy named Ender Wiggin, Ender is his nickname. His real name is Andrew, and he gets a nickname Ender because he ends things. So in this book, humankind is attacked by this alien race called buggers. And the governments, they want to produce a hero to fight those buggers and defeat them. And as a result, Ender Wiggin is born, and he goes into this space war school to fight buggers. This book is about many things. It's about how communication matters, how communication can save lives, and the lack of communication can hurt. And also it's about cooperation, is how those kids, they learn to work together to achieve one goal. This book is about inaction of adults, and how deliberate inaction of adults can lead to horrendous results. Above all, this story is about a young boy who simply wanted to be loved and appreciated, and the adults in his life, well, they did not necessarily bully him. However, they enabled things to happen to him, and this is probably the most thrilling part of the book, at least it was for me. There's an interesting review from Amazon. Above all, this story is about humanism, about a teenager that tries to grow up a decent person in an environment that doesn't give him any single chance. I don't know how the exact words are in English, but I'm translating what's in Russian to you. Yeah, this is actually correct. Ender tries to be a decent person in a world that doesn't let him, the world that wants him to be a war machine. So the next book is actually a trilogy. It's a fun trilogy, and this is Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Briggs. Yes, I know that there are more books. However, I'm just showing you the first trilogy. This is the one I have. So the first book is Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. The second one is The Hollow City. And the third one is Library of Souls. So these books are definitely fun. I remember when I was reading this book last year, my brain forgot about the world around me for a while. This is definitely a definition of escape. So this book is about a young boy named Jacob Portman who grew up listening to his grandfather's unusual stories, some very scary, bizarre, you name it. And when danger arrives, Jacob goes to this island where his grandfather grew up to uncover some secrets, and he discovers the home for peculiar children and Miss Peregrine, who looks after them. Yeah, quite a cool mystical books right here, and a very interesting adventure, and also they can be quite dark. And this is actually one of the reasons I really dislike the film. Well, mostly because it was very sugary, very Hollywood-like, whereas the books, they weren't that sugary. At some point they could be very dark and scary and unsafe. And the film, well, let's not talk about it. Okay, I don't know if these books are still relevant. I don't know if anybody talks about them. Well, I don't think I'm going to reread them myself. However, I do keep them on my shelves, well, because of the nostalgia and simply just because. And this is the Maze Runner trilogy by James Dashner. The first one, The Maze Runner, the second one, The Scorched Trials, and the third one, The Death Cure. I don't know if these are still relevant, but it's still a very fun trilogy. Well, at least definitely the first one is quite fun. So The Maze Runner is about a boy named Thomas who finds himself in a mysterious field surrounded by a maze, and nobody managed to find a way out of the maze. So nobody remembers anything about the past life except for their names, not even last names, the name. So throughout the first book, the main characters, they want to try to find a way to escape, and Thomas is especially determined to do that, since he has some flashbacks of his past life. I do remember back in the day when these books were really popular. That was around 2014 and 15. That was also the time where the films came out, well, at least the first and the second one. Well, between the first and the second one, a lot of people read these books and they liked them. And this is the only teen dystopia. Out of all teen dystopias promoted to me, this was the only teen dystopia that I got my hands on. I do remember which teen dystopias were recommended, and I was like, nah, I will skip. I did pay attention to these ones and I got them, and I don't regret that. Okay, for the most part I showed you some young adult novels. However, this video is not only about young adult but also some contemporary fiction, and in other words, something really modern. Well, modern books with modern topics, probably with social media and so on. And this is why I'm going to recommend also the Fredrik Backman novels. Well, I read only two. So this is Grandma Says That She's Sorry, and this one is Anxious People. Grandma Says She's Sorry is about a young girl named Elsa who is really close to her grandmother, and then grandma dies and leaves some letters. And then it is revealed that grandma has a lot to apologize for. It's fun and dramatic at the same time, but it's more dramatic. And this one probably is his most famous book. This is the first book by him that I read. This book is about a group of people who comes to look at a flat. They want to buy a flat, and then a failed burglar entered with a gun. And then suddenly everyone became a hostage. Tragic and fun, but mostly fun. Everyone reveals something bizarre about themselves and their relationship to each other. And oh, by the way, I forgot to mention that both these books are set in Sweden because the author himself is Swedish. So this book also takes place around New Year, so this probably would be cool to read around the New Year. At some point you probably are going to hate the book, well, because once you open it, it starts talking about life too much, and you'd probably think, stop preaching to me. But then you dive deep into the book and then you realize that it's definitely so much fun. Tragic and fun, and the hostages are idiots. I didn't call them idiots, the book itself did. The next book is Bunny by Mona Awad. I don't own this book, I took it from the library and I want to own it. The definition of the book that is labeled not for everyone, because the book definitely is not for everyone. So the book is set on a college campus. The main character, who is a loner, who tries to survive while interacting with a group of those your stereotypical mean girls who call each other bunnies. And one day she gets, this loner girl gets an invitation from the bunnies. The main character accepts the invitation, and it's a start of the whole madness. And I think if you have seen Mean Girls and the other films with Mean Girls in them, you probably know the whole mean girl cliches. So this book takes all the cliches and transforms them into something really gory and scary. The book is literally a horror, and it's really crazy, and if such stuff is for you, then go for it. So the next book is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. I absolutely love how interactive this book really is, because this is a thriller mystery that has a lot of interactive moments. It has some social media messages, the pages from a planner, and also there are chapters that take place in the present, like in your standard novel, and I can tell you that the interactive parts are much more fun to read. All the articles, interviews, pieces of newspapers, and social media posts and messages, these are definitely fun to read. 5 years prior to the events of the book, a girl named Andy Bell is killed by her boyfriend, Sal Singh. So Sal confesses the murder and kills himself, and the case is closed. So there's this schoolgirl named Pippa, who picks up this case as her project. She believes that the case should be opened because there were some nuances about the case that did not make sense, and she starts to uncover some truths about what really happened. This book is a really fun young adult. But for me, it's also less about investigation, it's more about the gaslighting, how it's going to affect people. And also one of my favorite parts about the book is that the main character, well, she hasn't met this victim, Andy. However, based on all the evidence she gathers, she feels like she knows her. And this, to be honest, is one of my favorite aspects of books in general. Well, imagine this, you don't know a person in real life. It doesn't matter who is the person. Maybe it's your neighbor, or maybe it's the random person over the street, or a famous person, or whatever, doesn't really matter. However, then you gather some stories surrounding that person, you get to know more about them, and then suddenly you feel like you know them. Okay, that's definitely not the point of the book, but did really take this into account because I think it sounded really interesting. You get this picture of an individual based on what you know about them, and also how the perfect schoolgirl, perfect grades and beauty, how it can be a facade. The book deals with bullying, harassment, gaslighting, etc. But the investigation itself is really stellar. And the climax is quite unpredictable, and it's really fun to read. Next one is quite underrated. It's a Ruby Red trilogy by Kirsten Gier. A lot of people were reading these books around 2015, but now I don't hear people talk about these books much. These books are about a girl named Gwendolyn who discovers that she has a gene that allows her to time travel, and uncovers some deepest secrets of a society of time travelers. So she comes from a family with that time traveling gene. Also, these books, they feature family rivalry. I mean that there are two families that rival each other. Both families, they share a time traveling gene. And like I said, they rival each other. Okay, I do realize that these books are very naive. They're way too easy to read, and they probably aren't too deep, but they're still very addictive, very fun. And also there are 3 John Green books that I read. An Abundance of Catherines. So it's a book about the guy named Colin who dated around 19 girls named Catherine, and he is into mathematics, and he goes on a journey with his friend, and he ends up in a small town and he meets this girl and her mother, and to be honest, I don't exactly remember the exact plot of the book. I read it a long time ago. However, I do remember the plot points of the next book. It's Paper Towns. I read this book multiple times, and I also watched the film. I really like the film, I just don't like that they changed the ending. The book is about this guy called Q who likes his neighbor, Margot, who leads quite an extraordinary life, and then one night she comes to him and asks to come on a quest with her, and on the next day she disappears, and she leaves clues, so Q, the main guy, Quentin, his name, can find her. It's not a mystery novel. I think this is mostly about the fact that the main character has to learn that Margot is a real person. She's not an idea. He had this idea of her. It's sort of an idealized picture of her. And by the end, he does come to realization that she, after all, is just a girl. And the third one is Will Grayson. John Green wrote that book with another author, I don't remember his name, it's David, I can't pronounce his last name. So the book is about 2 guys named Will Grayson, and one day they cross paths. I can say that Will Grayson is probably the first book that I managed to read in English from start to finish. I don't have any John Green book in my hands right now. I don't own them anymore because my reading tastes have changed, and I'm definitely not going back to these books. Also, as for January 2024, I am reading currently The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I include this much later because like I said, I'm reading this and I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm sure that this does belong in this video. Yes, I have already read 122 pages in 4 days and I love it. That's all. These are all the books. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. What are young adult / contemporary books that you like? As a person who doesn't read the genre, let me know down in the comments. And if you are into young adult or contemporary or both, I hope you still enjoyed this video. See you next time. Goodbye.